There's a common theme here. The industry is figuring out that Connecticut is a wonderful place to take advantage of the high density of talented engineers and scientists who are working on solving really hard problems, but at the same time, do it in a place where it's cheaper to do business, higher quality of life, and just a wonderful place to be.
On behalf of the Academy members, welcome to Living and Learning STEM in Connecticut, the podcast of the Connecticut Academy of Science and Engineering. My name is Tana Modillion. I'm an elected member of the Academy and serve as an officer on its council. I invite you to learn more about the Academy by visiting our website at ctcase.org. Today we'll discuss Yale Ventures, the university's hub for innovation and entrepreneurship, with 5 accelerator funds addressing the life sciences, engineering, autoimmunity, digital health, and planetary solutions. Yale Ventures supports the process of turning faculty-led business ideas into real-world solutions. I'm joined by Josh Geballe, Senior Associate Provost for Entrepreneurship and Innovation and Managing Director of Yale Ventures. Prior to launching Yale Ventures in 2022, Josh served as Chief Operating Officer for the state of Connecticut under Governor Ned Lamont. Welcome, Josh, and thank you for being part of our podcast today. Before we start, do you mind sharing a bit about your background, please?
Sure. Well, thank you for the invitation. It's wonderful to be with you. My background is I grew up in Connecticut, went to college at Yale, worked for a few years and went back to Yale to the business school, and then spent most of my career in the tech industry. So I spent 11 years initially at IBM in a variety of roles, primarily in our technology services business unit that took me from New York to DC to London and eventually back to Connecticut. After 11 years, I left to become the CEO of a company that did things very differently, grew very rapidly, and ultimately was acquired by Thermo Fisher Scientific, where I worked for about a year and a half, leading a new division they created when we were acquired called Digital Science, which included our company, Core Informatics, plus some other software assets that they already had. So once the integration was done and the team was set up for success, I left and was taking some time off when I got a phone call from the woman who led the Series B investment in our startup company. And she pointed out that her husband had just got elected governor of Connecticut. So this is Annie Lamont, who leads Oak HCFT and was got to know very well through her and her firm's investment in our company. And so she was very persuasive, as is the governor. And I was really thrilled to be invited to join the administration in its first term as the commissioner of the Department of Administrative Services, and then as the chief operating officer responsible for all the executive branch agencies. And so worked there for 3 years, at which point we had kind of made it through COVID, and COVID was starting to recede. And at that time, I got some outreach from a friend at Yale who shared with me the job post for the role that I'm now in that was newly created by the university. And that's what led me to come back to Yale after all those years.
Wow, you've had a very interesting path up to Yale thus far. And it seems like, the startup kind of laid the groundwork for coming to the Yale Ventures piece of this. So if you don't mind just giving us, what is the purpose of Yale Ventures?
Sure. So think of Yale Ventures as the umbrella organization across the university for entrepreneurship and innovation. And under that umbrella, there's a number of different programs we run, services we provide that in various ways support our students and our faculty in the broader Connecticut innovation community as well. And so just to hit the highlights quickly, we run the university's tech transfer office. So that's where we patent and license out the new discoveries that are coming out of the $1.3 billion a year that Yale spends on research. We run a number of accelerator programs that in different scientific and engineering domains provide targeted support to some of the most promising new technologies that were being developed with an aim to de-risk them and hopefully spin them out into startup companies or partnerships with industry. We run the Student Innovation Center, Sci-City. We run a group that focuses on corporate strategy and partnerships. And then we do a lot of work building the startup ecosystem in and around New Haven and Connecticut. We do have a real strong interest of these companies we're spinning out stick around and contribute to the growth and opportunity.
Ah, okay. All right. Yeah. So I mean, it really is a place to foster all the hard work that, that all these researchers have done. Do you, I guess, just as an aside, I know several universities in the area have something kind of similar. Do you guys interact and work with each other, or is it completely like separate? I know UConn has something similar, but
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
UConn has a similar operation. They're the other kind of R01 research university in Connecticut. And some of our investigators work together and collaborate on research. And notably, we're working together very closely right now on an initiative called Quantum CT, which is a collaborative effort between Yale, UConn, the state of Connecticut, and a number of corporate partners to build out and really establish Connecticut as one of the leading hubs for quantum research and innovation and entrepreneurship in the world. And so we're working very closely together on that.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. So, you mentioned earlier that you guys have five accelerator funds. Do you mind just delving into a bit more detail on what those funds are?
Yeah, so they're domain specific, right? And having expertise and depth in the area of research and we're supporting is really important. We have the Blalotic Fund for Innovation, which primarily specializes in developing new therapeutics and diagnostics. And so like deep biology, chemistry, research, translating into products that hopefully cure diseases and help patients. There's uh, another life sciences focused accelerator called the Colton Fund, which is specifically focuses on autoimmune diseases. We have the Roberts Fund for Innovation, which supports technologies coming out of our engineering school. And then we have two new ones that have launched in the last year. One called Planetary Solutions Impact Accelerator. That focuses on new climate technologies. So think carbon removal and sequestration, renewable energy, green chemistry, all sorts of technologies that are helping to protect and improve the climate and the planet and our ecosystem. And then the newest one is called Health Tech Works, which focuses on health technology, a lot of AI applications and drug discovery, healthcare delivery, as well as med tech and some other technologies in that space.
Okay. So I know you mentioned when I asked about UConn, and you guys have a collaboration with Quantum CT. Ha- are you guys looking at from an energy perspective, because I know there's AI and quantum may potentially use more energy. Is that baked into the planetary solutions piece for the accelerator, like where you guys are looking, or is that kind of out of the realm with respect to quantum CT?
Yeah, there are a number of investigators at Yale. I'm sure there are some at UConn too, but I know the Yale one's better, who are very focused on technologies that could reduce power consumption of semiconductors, data centers, and in particular. So the project I'm thinking of in particular has been supported through the Roberts Innovation Fund, and so it's a good example of where engineering innovations get support from these accelerators, and hopefully that uh, increases the chances that they can marshal the resources they need to really be scaled up and have a global impact.
Okay. So, so does the Yale Ventures Accelerator Fund, how much does that differ from like external VC when you're trying to do like a VC funding round? Is it similar? Is it different? What are there any stipulations? Like what are your outcome measures, I guess?
Yeah. So there are definitely similarities, and there are also some very important differences. So the similarities are generally in the areas of how the program runs. So we run a competitive cycle where people apply and a select number are accepted or awarded. And then those awardees receive both funding as well as a significant amount of mentorship and support, both from our staff at Yale Ventures as well as from outside mentors that we recruit and put to work on projects. We also enlist students oftentimes to help support and work on the projects as well. And the goal at the end of the accelerator program is that a technology is advanced to the next set of milestones and is ready for additional investment and spin out. So those are the similarities of a lot of external accelerators that you will have heard of. The biggest difference is that everything we do is inside the university. So we're a nonprofit. And so we're dipping in and supporting technologies at a much earlier stage. These haven't been spun out into companies yet. These are still translational research projects that may or may not ever draw external funding. So we're taking much more risk, and we're giving out the funding also as a grant. So most of the accelerators will give the money in exchange for equity in the startup. We're giving that grant into a research lab to try to de-risk the technology and advance it to the point where it could be spun out into a startup company. It could be investable. So we're a little further upstream. We're focused exclusively on Yale technologies and Yale research. But in terms of the guts of the program, there are a lot of similarities.
Okay, so I guess, so how would you, so since it is a grant, so do you guys have it sounds like you have a very robust de-risking process for picking where you actually invest your funds, or is it based off of a researcher's established track record and the funding that they brought in for their original research, and then now they're trying to develop it further? Or am I off the mark there?
Yeah, we're looking for the same types of things that early stage investors are looking for: a big market, an important problem that needs to be solved, a strong team, and really compelling technology, really novel, interesting, new innovations. Maybe one difference is that investors will often want to support people who've done it before. We're equally happy to support people who are doing it for the first time. In fact, most of the projects we support are coming out of labs and faculty who it's their first effort in commercialization or first try as being a faculty entrepreneur. And we love that because I think, as your audience probably knows, as scientists and engineers, many of the best ideas come from unexpected places, and you need to be very humble about your own ability to identify in advance, what's likely to really have a huge impact or not. And so our goal is to try to support great ideas wherever they come from.
Yeah, no, that definitely sounds fantastic. And it gives the researchers the opportunity to push the envelope without a lot of worry about, I need to actually show an ROI like right now. So that allows for probably greater discoveries. So I guess, what are the funding amounts? Is there like a cap, or is it, I guess, how does that work? Like when you guys are allocating funds?
Yeah, so it depends on the accelerator. These accelerators, I should also add, are all funded through philanthropy to the university. So these are
Awesome.
gifts that are made to Yale that enable us to run these programs. So without the generosity of our alumni and other donors, like, these programs wouldn't exist. So the grants are kind of proportional to the needs of that technology to de-risk in the early stages. So on the high end, for example, it's very expensive to develop drugs, as I think most people know. And even in the very early stages, doing some additional, preclinical validation studies and experiments, with a contract research organization can be very pricey. And so those grants can often be in the neighborhood of $300,000. On the other extreme, projects that are purely software based, as people probably know, you can do a lot on a shoestring budget when you're just developing software. And so those grants can be as small as $50K, but we help secure in-kind resources as well. So we get a lot of credits from the big AI labs. We get credits from the cloud hosting providers and other kind of in-kind support that can help complement those cash grants as well.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for adding a bit of polish on that. With respect to the accelerator funds, can you just talk about some of the things that have come out of these accelerators from a transition perspective?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, several of them are very new, but one that's been around the longest is the Blavatnik Fund for Innovation, where we're developing therapeutics that we're in our 8th or 9th year now of that program. And as a result of the funding and support that the team's provided over the years, we've launched 35 new startup companies. We have 3 drugs in clinical trials. Companies have raised collectively over $300 million now. And most of that money has come back into the Connecticut economy here. So really promising results so far, and we're really excited about how projects out of all these accelerators develop in the years to come.
Okay, so from an IP perspective, is it shared between the startup and Yale, or is it owned by the startup, or is it completely owned by Yale? Like how does that work?
Sure. So this is all orchestrated under a federal law called the Bayh-Dole Act from 1980. So all research universities basically handle this the same way, which is that under the act, intellectual property that's developed using federal funding, the ownership of that IP goes to the university, but with an obligation to license it out, to work hard to try to get that technology out into the private sector where it can be developed into useful products and services. And so we follow that framework as well. Yale owns the IP that's developed here, and then we work hard to license it out. I should be very clear, like we don't do this for the money. This work is all about impact. Like we want the investments that the university makes and the federal government makes in research at this university, that foundations make in research at the university. We want it to have as great an impact for society as we possibly can. That's what gets us all out of bed in the morning. And that's really our North Star. Most of the projects that we spin out, like most startup companies, don't make it all that far, and very few go on to real significant success. So you have to have a lot of shots on goal to hopefully get some products out there that do make a difference at a large scale. And when they do, there are economic benefits. So, and when we license out that intellectual property, we usually have a small, like low single digit equity stake in that startup company. If it's a new therapy, there'll often be a royalty associated with sales on that product if it ever makes it to market. But, the economics to the university are very small compared to the economics to the founders, to the investors, and the people who do the real hard work to get those products de-risked, scaled up, and ultimately in the hands of patients and customers that need them.
Okay. Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. So with the future of innovation in CT, Connecticut, can you just touch on why Yale Ventures is so important to that future?
Sure. Well, one of the reasons I really wanted to come back and do this job 4 years ago was for this reason. Yale, we're fortunate at Yale to have such an incredible collection of brilliant people, in particular, brilliant researchers, our faculty, and then the students, the trainees, the postdocs who work in the labs. It's just an amazing community of brilliant people who are working every day to try to solve really hard problems. And, as I'm sure your audience knows, there's a lot of work that goes in to the precursor technologies of the products that we use every day. And, a lot of the very basic research that builds to the translational research that builds to the new startups and the products and services takes years, takes enormous effort and perseverance. And, Yale is definitely, an important engine for the Connecticut ecosystem, producing new ideas, new breakthroughs that hopefully fuel innovation. You mentioned before the perspective I've had in my career, moving from like large companies like IBM and Thermo Fisher in the startup world. One of the things I observed is that most of the really interesting innovations, real breakthrough innovations, come out of startup companies, not out of the big behemoths. And so, having as much fertile ground and giving as much of an opportunity as possible to new, disruptive, innovative ideas, I think is really important. And that's something we're really focused on at Yale. And then I just add to that to say, when the companies do spin out of Yale, obviously they're free to go wherever they want. Companies need to go where they think they're going to be successful. We do have a real interest in seeing these spin outs stick around in Connecticut and take root here. And so we've also done a lot of work to support the creation of incubators like biolabs and Climate Haven that can be the first stop for these startup companies when they do spin out, make it easy for them to stay. It's much cheaper to do business here than it is in many of the big cities. It's a much higher quality of life to live here than it is in a lot of those big cities. So we think we have a really good equation, but we do a lot of work as well to help them stay here, which again will continue to fuel the growth of the Connecticut innovation community.
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks for that. That makes a lot of sense. And it's a completely cohesive and a holistic approach that you guys have established. So I guess, for STEM professionals interested in entrepreneurship, like, what advice would you have for them?
That's a big question. Everyone's circumstances are very different. I guess I'd say two things. One, and it may be a little cliched, so I apologize in advance, but they're probably my best answer to this question, which is one is if you're gonna start something new, you're gonna try to do a startup company. It's really important that you're doing something that you're really passionate about because if it goes well, you're probably going to be at it for a decade or more. And the people you co-found the company with and the team and the investors who might support you, like you're going to be working with them for a long time. So it's really important that you have an idea about something you're truly passionate about. You have some insight, you have some breakthrough innovation that you really want to work on very hard for a while. But that said, it's probably never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. When you think about the AI tools that are available to us now, how much you can get done using those tools with smaller and smaller teams, meaning you need less and less capital to develop new technologies and advance them further than ever. There's still a robust venture capital ecosystem. Even though you can do more with less, they still want to put a lot of money into startup companies. And it's easier than ever to get talent to work with you, not just where you live, but from around the world. And so if you do have a passion, you do have an idea, you do want to dive in, it's a great time to do it. And just generally, it is such a challenge, such a rewarding thing to work through. It's stressful, it's tough, there's ups and downs, but it's a wonderful experience. And certainly of the experiences I've had, it was my favorite. And it's why I wanted to come back here and help support like the next generation of up and coming founders. Because again, as I said, I really do think so many of the really important innovations in the world come out of startups, come out of people taking those risks, willing to try new things. And so, to the extent that we all can support those people as much as possible, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. That's sound advice, and it's definitely not cliche, what you said, because it's true, right? Like you gotta love what you're doing, and you gotta be able to stick with it and persevere because it's not gonna just turn over like that for you. But so just on that note, with the advice you just gave, for case members who are scientists and engineers, right? And I'm sure some of them are entrepreneurs, or some of them, most of them probably work for universities and for industry. If they're interested in, again, taking the step and becoming an entrepreneur, is Yale Ventures, is that an opportunity for them to try to apply for some of this funding, or is it something more exclusive to Yale researchers and some of the work that Yale researchers have done that would allow them to apply for the Yale Ventures funds?
Yeah. So most of what we do is within the university. We have limited resources, and all of these accelerator programs receive several multiples more applications than we have the ability to fund. So we do limit participation in many of these programs to current in the students and the postdocs in their labs. That said, we do try wherever we can to support the broader ecosystem. Places where you'll see a lot of evidence of this are in events that we host to bring the Connecticut innovation community together, to attract investors to come in from outside of the state to see Connecticut startups and meet Connecticut entrepreneurs. And so an example is the Yale Innovation Summit, which we run every year in May, which attracts 2,500 people from literally around the world. We run pitch competitions and panels and a wide range of events, but it's open to everybody. And the pitch competitions are open to all Connecticut startups and not just Yale startups. And so Connecticut Innovations is an active partner there, and a lot of their portfolio companies are there pitching, meeting new investors. So that's one way that we hopefully provide some broader service to the Connecticut startup ecosystem. And there's many more, but we do try to support our colleagues in the state startup ecosystem as much as possible. But as I mentioned, a number of those accelerator programs, just we do have to limit those to current Yaleys.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, have any startups gone to the point of an IPO, like an initial public offering?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We've had 5 IPOs in the last 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
including companies that are based here in Connecticut, like Arvinas, one of the pioneering companies behind the field of protein degradation. They IPO'd several years ago, still based in Science Park here in New Haven. IPO is one way to liquidity. Another, of course, is acquisition. And more recently, we had two major acquisitions in the last several months. Halda Therapeutics, another biotech company founded by Yale faculty Craig Cruz and based here in New Haven, was acquired in December for $3 billion by Johnson & Johnson. And in January, our quantum computing startup, Quantum Circuits, also based here in New Haven, was acquired by a public quantum company called D-Wave for over $500 million. And what's really exciting about those acquisitions is that in both instances, acquired by large public companies who committed to keep the teams here in New Haven and actually continue to invest and grow the teams in New Haven. So strong endorsement of the local innovation ecosystem here from those big companies, knowing that we've got great talent, we've got great momentum, and this is a good place to continue to innovate.
Yeah, I was gonna thanks for beating me to it. I was gonna ask if they were gonna, because sometimes acquisitions can spell doom for yeah. So I definitely appreciate you mentioning that.
Another example of that also is Alexion, going back a few more years.
Okay.
Alexion came out of Yale Research and, of course, grew very large and was acquired for $42 billion by AstraZeneca. And we were very concerned, as you pointed out, that would impact, the several hundred researchers here in New Haven. But AstraZeneca went the other way. They doubled down on New Haven, declared New Haven their global rare disease research hub, and have taken even more lab space here in New Haven and 101 College Street when that was built. There's a common theme here. The industry is figuring out that Connecticut is a wonderful place to take advantage of the high density of talented engineers and scientists who are working on solving really hard problems, but at the same time, do it in a place where it's cheaper to do business, higher quality of life, and just a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. So I guess as another curiosity, like what do you have a favorite pitch that you've heard from a startup? And why? I guess.
You can't ask me. You can't ask me to choose who's my favorite amongst our children. It's not fair.
But every parent has a favorite.
I have a few, but here's what I would say. I would encourage your listeners to come pick their own favorites. Come to the Yale Innovation Summit. It's May 27th and 28th in New Haven. It's a fantastic event. In addition to the pitch competitions and the panels and all of the thousands of amazing people who are there, there's concerts and there's parties and there's a lot of fun too. I encourage everybody to come to the Yale Innovation Summit. You pick your own favorites. You'll have a lot to choose from.
No, I definitely appreciate that. So with that, anything else you'd like to add that we didn't discuss today?
I guess the only thing I'd say that is maybe an invitation for your listeners as well. I alluded to this earlier, but one of the ways that we really multiply the impact that our staff at Yale Ventures can have is through executives of residence, EIRs, who volunteer their time to help support a select number of projects in areas where they have expertise. And so if any CASE members are interested in being involved in these programs, please reach out. It's a lot of fun. You get to meet the investigators at Yale, who are typically the leading scholars in the world in their fields, and often help them, provide advice, use your experience and expertise to help them make good decisions and think about the questions that they need to find answers for in their journey. So if any of that sounds fun, please reach out and we'd love to get you involved.
Yeah, no, I'm sure our listeners would definitely be interested in taking you up on that. And they can reach out directly to you, or should we point them to the website or?
Yeah, they can reach out directly to me. That's fine. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, or my email is just firstname.lastname@yale.edu. So josh.geballe@yale.edu.
Okay, we'll make sure we try to link that in the show notes as well. So very much appreciate the discussion today, and thanks for making that tie for some of our listeners and CASE members as well.
My pleasure, and thank you to you and the rest of the CASE team for everything that you do. You're a really important organization in our state, and we're very grateful for all your work.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So on behalf of CASE, again, I just want to thank Josh Geballe for joining us today to provide our listeners with insights into Yale Ventures. Listeners, I encourage you to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. Visit the Academy's website at CT Case to learn more about our guests, access show notes with additional resources, read the episode transcript, and sign up for the Case Bulletin. Thanks again to our guest. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today, and I can't wait to see what comes next for Yale Ventures.
Thank you.